My sister had a habit of stealing every man I ever dated. But this time, I introduced her to someone who made her regret it for good. My name is Olivia. I'm 25 years old, and this is a story I've carried for a long time. It's about my sister Natalie, and how I finally broke a cycle that had been quietly tearing me apart. It's not a simple story, and not one I'm completely proud of, but it's mine. Natalie is 3 years younger than me, and she has always been the family's golden girl. While I was the responsible and hardworking daughter who studied hard and stayed out of trouble, she was the charming one, beautiful, confident, and able to get anything she wanted with a smile or a few fake tears. Our parents made those differences clear through constant comparisons. "Why can't you be more relaxed like Natalie?" Or, "Olivia,
It all
your
started
sister just
when I
has
was
a natural
16.
way with people.
I was dating
You should
David,
learn from her."
a
Senior, my first serious boyfriend. The kind of teenage love that feels eternal. Natalie was only 13, but she already knew how to draw attention from boys. At a house party, she showed up wearing one of my tightest tops and started asking David innocent questions about his dreams, fears, and hobbies. Within 2 weeks, he broke up with me, saying he needed space. A week later, I caught them kissing in the backyard. When I told my parents what happened, their response never changed. "She's just a kid, Olivia. You should be more patient with your little sister." But I knew from her eyes, she understood exactly what she was doing. There was a tiny spark of satisfaction every time she took something that was mine. At 17, it was Marcus, the basketball captain. At 18, Jeremy, my chemistry lab partner, whom I studied with for months. At 19, it was Alex, the boy I met in college, the one I spent an entire summer talking to. The pattern was always the same. Natalie would suddenly take interest in whatever they liked, flirt just enough to seem harmless, and soon they'd lose interest in me. Losing boyfriends wasn't even the most painful part. Over time, I accepted that if they were easily tempted by someone younger, maybe they were never the right ones. What truly broke me was how my parents always defended her. It was never her fault, always a coincidence, always a misunderstanding. When I turned 20 and entered my 3rd year of college, I hoped things would change. Natalie was now busy with her senior year of high school. For a few months, I believed I could finally have a relationship without her interference. That's when I met Daniel, an engineering student who worked part-time at the campus library. He was different, mature, focused, and deeply interested in serious conversations about life. We dated for 4 months before I made the mistake of introducing him to Natalie at her birthday dinner. Soon after, she began asking casual questions: where I went on weekends, what my plans were, where Daniel and I usually met. I knew she was probing, but I couldn't imagine how she'd find more information without my help. Her reasoning was always the same, paired with that sweet smile she had perfected since childhood. "It's not my fault if they prefer someone younger and more interesting, Liv. Maybe you should ask yourself why they lose interest." And when I confronted her, she would say, "If they really loved you, they wouldn't fall for me so easily, right?" That's how my early 20s went, always watching, always afraid the next man I cared about would fall for her. I developed a strange kind of paranoia, analyzing every look and every word for signs of betrayal. Her behavior evolved over the years. When we were teenagers, she used simple tricks, acting helpless, pretending to need help with homework, or showing vulnerability that drew boys in. But as she got older, she'd research my boyfriend's interests, follow their social media, and suddenly develop opinions on things she never cared about. Bands, films, books, just to seem compatible. Each time she succeeded, she acted like it was a lesson for me. She'd say, "I'm just showing you how men really are. They always want someone younger." And our parents, they kept defending her. You're overreacting, Olivia. Sisters compete. It's natural. Somehow, I became the jealous one, the overly possessive one, even though I was just trying to protect what was mine. Meanwhile, Natalie thrived. She graduated high school as prom queen, got into college with a merit scholarship, and continued collecting admirers like trophies. None of her relationships. Maybe I could at least date men who wouldn't fall for her charm. I looked for maturity, someone older, stable, immune to childish games. That's how I met Justin. Justin was 28, a supervisor at a logistics company. Confident, kind, and emotionally grounded. We met through a dating app and connected instantly. Our relationship grew slowly but meaningfully. We shared goals, books, and long talks about life. For 6 months, I managed to keep him completely away from my family. I made excuses for family gatherings, lied that he was on business trips, even created a separate social media profile to keep Natalie from finding him. But secrets don't last forever. Mine ended at Christmas that year. My aunt casually mentioned seeing me with a handsome man at the mall, and I immediately noticed the spark in Natalie's eyes, the same one that always meant trouble. Later that night, while washing dishes, she said, "Why didn't you tell us about this boyfriend? Are you embarrassed or something?" I ignored her, but she never let things go easily. Over the next few weeks, she asked about my weekends, my plans, and where I spent time. I knew she was digging. I just didn't realize how far she would go. One Thursday afternoon, I arrived at Justin's apartment earlier than expected. The door was unlocked. I heard voices in the living room and assumed he was on a work call, until I walked in and saw him on the couch with Natalie. She was wearing a dress I'd never seen, her makeup perfect, that smug smile on her face. "Hi, Liv," she said brightly. "What a coincidence. I was just telling Justin about the time you—" I didn't hear the rest. My body went numb, my stomach twisted, and I felt the familiar weight of betrayal. "How did you find out where he lives?" I asked quietly. She shrugged. "It was easy." Justin finally looked at me, but not with guilt, just fascination. The same look every man before him had given her. I didn't stay. I walked out without another word. Hours later, Justin called to say he needed time to think. 2 weeks later, Natalie's Instagram was public again, showing photos of them together with the caption, "Sometimes love appears when we least expect it." After Justin, I spent months in emotional silence. I buried myself in work, went to the gym, and avoided everyone. It was safer that way. But as time passed, loneliness began to hurt more than betrayal ever did. I started wondering if it was fair to keep letting Natalie control my life, if I was really going to let her turn me into a bidder. I had long convinced myself that I would remain single out of fear of what might happen if I let someone in. It was during those private doubts that I met Lucas. He was standing in line at the coffee shop where I bought my morning latte, politely asking the barista about the difference between espresso and American coffee. He wore dark-rimmed glasses. His brown hair was a bit messy, and he carried a worn leather briefcase. When it was his turn, he ordered a simple black coffee and laughed in a way that made me smile without meaning to. Our first real conversation happened by chance when a heavy rain trapped us both under the coffee shop awning. He mentioned he'd left his umbrella in the car. I told him I always carried an extra one in my purse, and we began talking about planning, weather, and how you can't prepare for everything in life. "I'm a software engineer," he said, when we moved to work topics. "I spend my days trying to predict system failures, yet I still forget to check the weather before leaving." He spoke calmly, without rushing or trying to impress, and genuinely seemed interested in what I said. When I told him I worked in accounting, questions about my routine and said he admired people who keep things organized. When the rain stopped, he asked if I wanted to grab a proper coffee sometime, somewhere we wouldn't need a storm as an excuse. I accepted, though a familiar anxiety hit me immediately. Sooner or later, I'd need to introduce Lucas to my family. This time, I decided on a different tactic. If I could keep him hidden long enough, maybe our bond would be strong enough to survive Hurricane Natalie when it inevitably struck. Our first real date was at a small downtown coffee shop, away from my neighborhood and anyone I might know. Lucas arrived 5 minutes late, apologizing and explaining he'd lost track of time fixing a bug at work. We talked for 3 hours. He told me about his family in Oregon, moving here 2 years earlier for work, his love for vintage board games, and his secret dream of writing science fiction. I shared my college days, my plan to open an accounting firm someday, and my obsession with true crime documentaries. I didn't mention Natalie even once. At the end of the afternoon, he said, "It might be early, but I feel like I could have known you for years and still find new things about you." It felt right. In the weeks that followed, we built a careful routine. We always met far from my home and family. We scheduled dates through a messaging app I kept hidden, and I invented a fictional friend, Sarah, to explain my outings to my parents. For 7 months, I managed to keep Natalie out of my romantic life. I tightened privacy settings, stopped posting photos that might reveal locations or companions, and built a parallel social life that never intersected with family. But the universe has its ways of reminding you that you don't control everything. On Memorial Day, the family gathered at my parents' house for a traditional barbecue. I felt relaxed and genuinely happy. I'd spent the morning with Lucas and still carried the glow of a healthy relationship. My cousin Megan, studying veterinary medicine, arrived late from work and greeted me with excited news. "Olivia, I didn't know you were dating someone," she said, hugging me. "I saw you at Lincoln Park last week with a tall man in glasses. You looked so in love. Why didn't you bring him today?" My stomach dropped. Lincoln Park was where Lucas and I had picnicked the previous Tuesday. I tried to say she must have mistaken me for someone else, but Megan insisted. "No, I'm sure it was you. You had that blue blouse from Grandma's birthday." The guy looked intellectual. Natalie, who had appeared silently beside me, tilted her head and offered that practiced curiosity I knew well. "Mysterious boyfriend again, Liv? Why hide him from the family?" she asked, smiling sweetly. Natalie immediately began searching social media and tracking Lucas through mutual connections. Olivia found them together at Lucas's apartment on a Thursday afternoon. Natalie showed no remorse. She laughed cruelly and said she always got what she wanted. Lucas, meanwhile, showed indifference to my feelings. The Monday after Memorial Day, I posted a harmless photo on Instagram. A coffee cup on a table, nothing identifying. Within 2 hours, Natalie had liked and commented, "That coffee looks delicious. Where is it? I'm always looking for new places." It was the very coffee shop Lucas had taken me to because it was near his office. I'd posted absent-mindedly, forgetting that every detail could matter now. Over the next week, I tried to warn Lucas without sounding paranoid. I suggested we meet in different places for a while. I explained my family had become intrusive, and that I preferred to keep things private for now. "It's not that I'm rushing," he said during dinner at a Thai restaurant across town, "but sometimes it feels like you're running." See. Then privately, and then suddenly, "If there's something you won't tell me yet, that's fine, but I'd like to know we can be open eventually." How could I explain that I wasn't running from him but protecting him? How could I tell him about my sister without sounding bitter or paranoid? That Thursday, I decided to be brave. Maybe our relationship was strong enough to survive Natalie. I arranged to meet Lucas at his apartment after work and planned to tell him everything. About Natalie, my history of sabotage relationships, and why I'd been cautious. I used the key he'd given me 2 months earlier and arrived at 5:30 p.m. The door was unlocked, which was odd. I stepped inside calling his name, thinking he might be on a call or in the bathroom. I heard voices from the living room, plural voices. I recognized Lucas's laugh, the one I'd come to love, and another laugh too. My brain refused to process what I was hearing until I reached the living room and saw it myself. Natalie sat on his couch in a dress I'd never seen, perched like someone who hadn't just arrived. 2 coffee cups sat on the table, both partially finished. Lucas leaned back in his chair, relaxed, with that fascinated expression I'd seen before. When they saw me, Natalie smiled that familiar fake smile. "Hi, Liv. What a surprise," she said, rising gracefully. "I was just telling Lucas about that time you saved the cat from the tree as kids." Lucas looked at me with confusion. "You never told me you had a sister," he said. There was something different in his tone. "Natalie is amazing. We were having a great conversation. How did you find me?" I asked Natalie calmly. She answered as if it were trivial. She'd followed clues from my coffee post, gone back to the cafe until she saw us together, followed me home, and told the doorman she was my sister and that I'd left something. He let her up. She laughed that cruel laugh I knew too well. "I always get what I want," she said. Lucas watched us, already under her spell, the same gleam in his eyes, the same posture leaning toward her. I told Natalie she should leave. She moved slowly, picking up her purse. "Why the rush?" she asked. Lucas and I were getting to know each other. She planted a kiss on his cheek, longer than necessary, and whispered something that made him smile. When she left, Lucas turned to me with the expression that always marked the end of a relationship. Stunned, detached. "Why didn't you tell me about your sister?" he asked. I knew my answer no longer mattered. 3 days later, Lucas ended things. He offered no elaborate excuse, simply that he felt a special connection with Natalie and couldn't continue. When I asked if our 7 months meant nothing, he said the right person sometimes appears when you least expect it, as if Natalie were fate, not a calculating predator who'd tracked me down to wreck another relationship. That night alone in my apartment, I admitted a truth I'd been avoiding. I hated my sister. It wasn't jealousy or envy or normal sibling rivalry. It was a clear, cold hatred for someone who'd spent nearly a decade destroying my ability to trust and to imagine a future where I didn't hide the important people in my life. For the first time, I wondered, what if instead of always fleeing, I gave Natalie exactly what she wanted? Tired of being the victim of her spoiled sister, I decided to make her pay. I used my access to public records at the accounting firm where I worked to search criminal backgrounds and court filings. The idea came during sleepless nights after Lucas left. I reviewed relationships Natalie had ruined and thought, what if I stopped protecting my partners and instead set her up with someone who would teach her a lesson? At my firm, we had databases for background checks, part of security, protocols to detect fraud. I'd never used them for personal reasons, but the temptation was there. The Monday that followed, when colleagues left for lunch, I stayed. I searched for men aged 30 to 40 with legal histories tied to relationship harms, marriage fraud, romance scams, domestic violence, anything showing a pattern of predatory behavior toward women. I knew it was wrong, but reading each file brought a dark satisfaction. After 2 weeks of careful digging, I found the candidate, Nicholas Chen, 33, with a record of manipulation and psychological abuse. He'd been sued by 3 ex-girlfriends for financial fraud, faced an assault charge that was dropped, often a sign the victim had been pressured into silence, and was being sued for a fake investment scheme that ruined people's retirement funds. Nicholas presented himself as charming online, attractive, well-dressed. A confident smile that could fool someone who didn't know his past. He attended professional social events, posed as an investment consultant, and had a skill for finding vulnerable, wealthy targets. In other words, he was perfect for Natalie. I watched Nicholas like a project. I learned where he lived, a luxury apartment that didn't match his legitimate income. Where he ate, his hobbies, golf, fine wines, and activities that put him near affluent people. I found him, a 33-year-old with a history of psychological and financial abuse, now facing multiple lawsuits. I approached him at a cafe frequented by professionals, pretending to be a successful financial consultant scouting opportunities. The first step was making the contact believable. I needed to appear intriguing enough to keep him interested, but not so involved that I'd become a true target myself. I chose a cafe in the financial district where Nicholas showed up every Thursday morning. I wore my best suit, carried a high-end leather briefcase I had purchased just for this occasion, and positioned myself at a table where he was bound to notice me. When Nicholas walked in, I was speaking on the phone about closing a major deal, dropping financial terms I'd learned at work, citing impressive sums, and exuding the confidence someone like him would find compelling. True to form, he approached once I ended the call. "Sorry to intrude," he said, smiling with the charm I had seen in his photos. I couldn't help overhearing, "Do you work in financial consulting?" "Among other things," I replied enigmatically. "I help select clients identify investment opportunities." We spent an hour discussing business. I created a believable persona, a discreet, independent consultant seeking collaborations with talented professionals. Nicholas bought into it entirely, seeing me as a potential source of new investors. By the end of our conversation, we exchanged numbers and planned a dinner to explore business opportunities. He suggested a high-end restaurant, clearly trying to impress me, and I accepted gracefully. Over the next 2 weeks, I meticulously crafted my facade. I built a convincing online presence for my fictitious identity, opened a bank account with some funds to add credibility, and even rented a virtual office to establish a professional address. Nicholas was clearly interested, not romantically, but in the financial potential I represented. Perfect. I needed him invested enough to eventually meet my family. During our third meeting, I casually mentioned I had a younger sister. "She's beautiful and intelligent," I said, showing a recent photo of Natalie from social media. "She's finishing college and has a lot of potential." Nicholas's eyes lit up, not romantically, but evaluatively. He was sizing Natalie up as a potential mark, someone naive enough to be manipulated. "She seems charming," he said, scrutinizing the photo. "Very close," I lied. "She's always asking me to introduce her to interesting men. I think she's tired of college boys." The seed was planted. All that remained was to wait for the ideal moment to set up a meeting. That moment came when my mother called, inviting me to Natalie's 23rd birthday dinner. "Bring someone special this time," she said, hopeful. I replied, "I've been seeing someone, Nicholas. He's an investment consultant, very successful. Maybe it's time for him to meet the family." My mother was thrilled. In the lead-up to the dinner, I prepared Nicholas. I painted a picture of my close-knit, supportive family, highlighting my adorable sister eager to meet someone mature and established. "She's exactly your type, smart, ambitious, yet with a rare youthful innocence," I said. Nicholas smiled, a predatory smile I had learned to recognize. "I can't wait to meet her," he said. On the evening of Natalie's birthday, Olivia arrived with Nicholas, playing the role of the devoted girlfriend. Nicholas ignored Natalie's flirtation, focusing solely on me. This sparked Natalie's competitive fire, intensifying her seduction over the following weeks. The dinner took place at the family's favorite restaurant, elegant yet understated. Nicholas arrived punctually at 7 o'clock, perfectly dressed, a well-tailored dark suit, discreet tie, and confident air that signaled success without arrogance. He greeted my parents respectfully, presented flowers and fine wine, and engaged appropriately in conversation. His behavior toward me was flawless. Attentive, affectionate, devoted. He included me in discussions, praised my appearance, and made me feel central to the evening. For my family, used to seeing me alone or overshadowed by Natalie, this was transformative. Natalie arrived 15 minutes late, radiant and dramatic as always. She tried her usual charm on Nicholas. He was polite but uninterested, redirecting attention to me. Her confusion was evident. She was unused to being ignored by a man with another woman. During dessert, Natalie attempted to engage Nicholas about his work. "It must be fascinating," she said. "I'd love to know more." "It's just a job," he replied flatly, kissing my hand. "Today is about celebrating your incredible sister." Natalie's expression was priceless, publicly rejected for the first time by someone she expected to charm. By the evening's end, Nicholas was cordial but distant, leaving Natalie visibly unsettled. Over the next weeks, I subtly fueled her obsession. I shared Nicholas's preferences, contemporary art, fine wine, intelligence in women. Natalie began adjusting her behavior and posting about her studies, career, and hobbies to attract him. She admitted, bitterly, that we were happy together. Nicholas was resisting her charm, and that only intensified her desire. After 6 weeks, Natalie finally seduced Nicholas and moved into his luxury Chicago apartment, investing $38,000 of her savings into his investment fund. Her pursuit intensified. She followed him, coincidentally visiting the same areas, always trying to impress him. Nicholas remained polite, but uninterested, adhering to the script we had created. During a family dinner in October, Natalie exploded with frustration. She couldn't comprehend why Nicholas ignored her usual tactics. "Maybe he finally found someone worth focusing on," my mother said, smiling at me, confirming the plan's success. In November, Nicholas and I staged a minor public argument in a familiar cafe. Natalie learned of our split within 24 hours and immediately saw an opportunity. She visited his apartment to console him, convinced she was conquering a man who didn't want to be conquered. Nicholas played his part, feigning reluctance and allowing her to persist, gradually drawing her deeper into the trap. Nicolas' manipulation escalated. Natalie began spending money trying to impress him. Clothes, gifts, fine dining. By Christmas, they were officially dating, and she brought him to the family dinner, proud of her victory. In January, Nicholas suggested she move in permanently. She complied, unaware that the apartment was funded with stolen money and that lawyers were investigating him. Within weeks, she received calls from attorneys, realizing she had unknowingly become entangled in his schemes. Nicholas's behavior became controlling. He isolated her from friends and family, questioned her plans, and criticized her relatives. By March, she was completely cut off socially, dependent only on Nicholas and his investors. He presented a fake investment opportunity, persuading her to transfer her $38,000 savings, which he used to fund his lifestyle and schemes. By May, Nicholas's abuse became physical. He pushed her during an argument, leaving bruises, and monitored her communications. Her attempts to leave were blocked. He had control of her finances. The FBI eventually raided the apartment, suspecting her as an accomplice. Natalie was arrested, served 4 months in federal prison, 3 years probation, and lost her savings and credit. I underwent therapy for 8 months, learning to process guilt and distinguish justice from revenge. Natalie moved to Austin, rebuilt her life, and began dating someone honest and aware of her history. My family addressed toxic dynamics through therapy. Today, Natalie and I exchange birthday cards, but are not fully reconciled. We are no longer enemies. The cycle of manipulation has been broken, not perfectly, but enough to build separate, healthier lives. True victory lies not in destroying others, but in creating a life where past pain can no longer control you.